So another day and another terrible person in the Sonic community. This time of a much serious crime in comparison to what Amy Jones was doing. This time it's grooming, which is honestly horrendous, but we have to talk about it because this is what we do and it needs to be brought to awareness. And I know a lot of people don't use Twitter and don't like to read up on these dramas, especially when they're in a Google Doc, but that's just how it is. So I'd like to bring attention to this one as we do with everything else. So just yesterday, someone named Evelyn Rivera came out with their story about Hyper Potions. If you don't know who Hyper Potions is, they've been working in the Sonic community for a while and you've probably heard their name before, especially if you love Sonic Mania, as they did the main opening for that game being entitled Friends. Well, one half of the community, Kevin Villecco, recently was exposed for being a groomer. So we're going to go over that as they have released a Google Doc going over the situation. Now this Google Doc is only 13 pages in comparison to a lot of other docs we've had, and most of it is screenshots. So because of that, I am actually going to bother to read the entire thing, as I feel like, again, a lot of people are lazy and don't just read docs and they just take whatever bullet points they find and they believe they know the full story. So instead of doing that, I'm going to leave it not down to interpretation. I'm just going to read it fully and you guys can grasp the entire situation. Everything will be on screen as well, just in case you guys really want to read through and see if there are any mistakes or anything going forward. But this will be the whole story as to make it easier, especially because towards the end it is mostly just links and it has a section on red flags to look out for when it comes to grooming. So I'm just going to read through this and I hope you guys can listen thoroughly and grasp the situation and see why this is so wrong. So I'm going to ignore the introduction part as I don't think that's really necessary to this. You can read that if you want to. We'll go straight to the grooming part of this situation. So 2015 to 2017, grooming. When I was 15 years old, I met Kevin Villecco through a group chat with some mutual friends. We started talking privately through messages and video calls on Skype, and I began to suspect that he had a crush on me. I was starstruck, but felt a little uneasy because he looked older than I was, like an adult. I asked him how old he was. He replied that he was 24, and I told him I was 15. Now moving on to the screenshots of their chat. Oh, by the way, random question. Yeah? How old are you? Turning 25 in August. I'm younger than I am though, lol. Oh, wow, haha. I'm actually 15 to be honest. What? You don't look 15? Haha, I get that a bit. I don't look 24 though. I thought you were 17 or 18. Nope. Ha ha ha. Dang, I feel weird, LMAO. Ha ha ha, don't feel weird about it. You didn't know otherwise as I don't have my age anywhere. True. So Kevin acknowledges the awkwardness, but this didn't deter him from talking to me. His messages became more flirty, he'd shower me in compliments and give me feedback on my music. We would call each other for hours and he confessed to having a crush on me. I knew it was weird, but at the time I felt very lonely, and his attention made me feel validated, wanted, loved. He told me that he knew it was wrong, but that he couldn't help it. During a video call in September, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. In the following weeks, Kevin would then go on to tell me that he wanted to marry me, and told me that he had sexual dreams about me. It made me uncomfortable, but I really believed that he loved me, so in my mind, I couldn't have been wrong. It's really sad, just to make a little tangent here, but it's really sad that this is where we're going. Because seriously, it should be clear right from the start, but oh, I don't look 24, you look 17 or 18. Like, in your mind, that's obviously grooming, but at the time you don't see it that way. And honestly, it shouldn't matter, even if she was 17 or 18, this dude being 24, there's really no excuse in my mind, and especially when you hear that they're 16, or 15, you cut it off straight away. There shouldn't have been any more interaction past that, especially to the point that saying, oh, I love you, and this and that, but yeah, I don't want to keep going on a tangent as we go forward. Anyway, the next screenshot. I remember this specifically because I'm awful and, but I was sitting on the couch at one point, and you walked up behind me and kissed my neck, and you told me you noticed something happening. Then I turned around and pulled you down onto the couch and we laughed and kissed, and you put your head on my lap and looked up at me and we smiled. It's not too bad, but it is, LOL. Oh? I don't know, you reached down for it and I kissed your neck when you did. I feel like things work out over the next 3 years, that you're the kind of girl I would propose to. My mother found out about the relationship and she was furious. I was grounded and forbidden to talk to him. She had contacted the police and tried to get law enforcement involved, but they didn't do anything. I became bitter and angry and started to sneak around and find ways to talk to Kevin. He would tell me we shouldn't talk to each other, but would still reply every time and tell me that he missed me, loved me, and would wait for me. We started messaging each other using our secret accounts and Snapchats, and he would encourage me to delete the messages after sending so we wouldn't get caught in case I had my phone taken away again. This included messages of an explicitly sexual nature. 2017 to 2018, a glimpse of Kevin's true colours. In 2017, I turned 17. Since 17 is the age of consent in Texas, Kevin and I began to talk without hiding and started openly dating. He was 26, almost 27 at the time. In October 2017, he made plans to come visit me in Texas. My mother wasn't happy about it, but at this point, she realized there was nothing she could do to stop him, and she didn't want me to cut her off. During Kevin's visit, we went to a local convention. That was the first of many times that Kevin would sexually assault me. We went to the concert going on in one of the rooms at the convention. It was dark and we stood in the back. Kevin groped me and told me to stop. I assumed he didn't hear me because of the music playing, but I never mentioned it again, because I didn't want to rock the boat. I assumed that because he loved me, it was okay. Later during the convention, Kevin proposed to me. I said yes. At the end of 2017, I went to spend Christmas with Kevin and his family in Pennsylvania. He was living with his parents, and when they asked how old I was, I felt awkward. During that visit, we drove down to Maryland for his performance at MagFest 2018, at the beginning of January. Here we openly a couple, but I felt very paranoid, worrying that people I knew was 17. I wanted to protect Kevin and his reputation, so I avoided telling people my age and pretended that I was older than I actually was. In 2018, I moved to Pennsylvania with a couple of suitcases and moved in with Kevin and into his parents' house. He didn't have enough money for an apartment, and being only 17, I was too young to sign a lease. This is when I began to see indications of his true cover. Kevin would frequently fight with his mother, spend frivolous and showers me in gifts I didn't want or need, and pressure me into marrying him quickly so that our relationship would seem more legitimate, in case anyone thought he was a creep. 2018 to 2020, marriage, abuse, and rape. In July, we go out for our first apartment. In August, we married at the ages of 18 and 27. This is when life became hell. Money was disappearing quickly, as it appeared, and we lived in constant state of financial crisis and debt. I was completely alone in Pennsylvania, with no friends, no family, only Kevin. He discouraged me from talking to male friends online, and told me that they all just want to fuck me. The only friend I felt like I was allowed to have were friends that he approved of. He told me that my mum was a religious fanatic, and that she didn't really understand me, and that my siblings were fucking crazy, and had too many mental issues. I always struggled with loneliness and isolation growing up, but now I felt that perhaps it was just my destiny to be alone forever. During sex, Kevin would touch me in ways that would trigger uncontrollable panic attacks and cause me to disassociate. I told him to stop, but he told me that he couldn't help it, and that doing these things was just a primal instinct. On several occasions over the 2 years that we were together, Kevin would continue having sex with me, even when I was in the middle of these panic attacks and couldn't consent. If I told him to stop, he told me that he felt I didn't want him, or that he felt like a monster, or that he should kill himself, or that I'd be better off without him. This only sent me spiraling further, trying as desperately as I could in my mental state to stop him. I had to make excuses for what he had done, because if I didn't, I feared that he would hurt himself. In 2019, I sunk to a new low after releasing my first album. I was severely depressed. Kevin's assault and harassment worsened. He would grope me while I was working, playing video games, or doing chores. And no matter how many times I told him to stop, every single day he wouldn't. He told me that I never want to do it and that I made him feel unattractive. One of the worst regrets was coming out to Kevin as bisexual, which became a novelty for him to prey on. He would interrupt what I was doing to show me porn and pictures of girls, would ask me which of my female friends I thought were hot, and if I wanted to see their boobs. His words, not mine. And sex while he watched. This disturbed me profoundly. He wasn't talking about celebrity crushes or characters. These were real women that I knew, and I told him to stop, but this continued for as long as we were together. My life became a cycle of working on music, playing video games, and lying on the couch and disassociating. Things seemed perfectly fine on the surface on social media, during live streams and Discord calls, but the truth is, I was a prisoner. In late 2019, Kevin and I decided to move to Los Angeles for career opportunities. We flew out in February 2020 for the Sonic movie premiere, and solidified our plans to move in March 2020. Then the pandemic happened. We were stuck at home together in an empty, overpriced LA apartment. Every day Kevin would rant, blaming problems on the lockdown, on COVID, on the decision to move, on having no money. My birth control prescription ran out, and he would get angry at me for not wanting to have sex with him. He would continue to grope and harass me and continue to excuse himself by saying he couldn't help himself because he wasn't getting any. I avoided getting undressed and changing clothes around him because he would take my nakedness as an opportunity to grope me and try to initiate sex. He would lash out and yell at me for hours before turning it on himself again, saying things like, "I wish I was dead, I should just kill myself, and the world is better off without me." As I continued working and getting new gigs, he would self-deprecate things disguised as compliments. "You're a better composer than me. You're more talented than me." I would follow with, "I hate doing hyper potions, and all these things that I've done don't really matter." It made me feel terrible about myself for achieving anything. He made most of the money, there was little separation between our assets, and I felt totally worthless on my own. More screenshots. "I'm screaming at you all the time, making you cower, making you feel constantly scared of me and feel guilty." That sounds fucking bad. But it's difficult because it feels like you hate me sometimes, and it feels like you blame everything on me / moving here for me. Yes, I do that. You're not crazy. I do that. Everything worsened in August 2020. A blog got hold of the information that Kevin and I were together when I was a minor and he was an adult, and they published it without my knowledge or consent. I had made an effort to keep my age and the history of our relationship a secret, and seeing this information made public scared me to death. I tried to bury it. I denied and twisted the truth of the situation to anyone who asked me, because I felt so unsafe. My life was in danger. Kevin lost his mind. He and I were fighting nearly every day. He told me that I made him miserable and that moving to LA was the worst mistake of his life, and he bounced around between therapists. When he was assigned a therapist through an online service, he refused to meet with her because she was a Hispanic woman who wouldn't get him. I reminded him that I myself was an Hispanic woman. He told me that I was different and wasn't like her. I called him out and told him that he was racist, to which he said, "Maybe I'm a fucking racist then." At this point, I couldn't see any way out and considered killing myself. I told no one because I told them about the hell I was living in, then it would incriminate Kevin. The situation was utterly hopeless. The only reason I held on was because I was developing a project that I wanted to make since I was a little girl. I felt like I was closer than I'd ever been to actually making it happen, and to end it all would have felt like a waste. At the end of September and through early October, another friend was visiting LA. I would hang out with them and some other mutual friends, and I'd stay over late. I had been so alone and isolated that I had forgotten that I was like to be supported and feel loved. Kevin got upset with me and he'd guilt-trip me, saying that I cared more about my friends and that I didn't really love him. I told him about the arguing and the things he'd said. He unanimously told me that the way he was acting was unacceptable, and one of them told me that I needed to stand up for myself. The next time we argued, I called him out on his selfishness, his controlling behavior, and told him that he wasn't listening to me. I said that I needed to stand up for myself. He stared back at me and said, "How could you say that?" That was the final straw for me, and we agreed that there was no way forward together, and we separated. 2020 to 2022, divorce and healing. The transition was tough. Kevin moved back to Pennsylvania, and I stayed in LA. Since the lease was still ongoing, he kicked back less than half of the exorbitant rent. He also told me that no one would want to work with me anymore, and that coffee date would fail because he was no longer attached. It was extremely difficult to make ends meet, and I had to focus on grinding out coffee date tracks while also managing my mental well-being and finding a way to afford food and bills. My weight fell to 95 pounds. I had to pack up all of his belongings, store them, and mail them back to him, about 7 to 8 very large and heavy boxes, with the help of my friends and support system in LA. I was able to relocate to an affordable and safe apartment. I was able to get health insurance and get therapy that I could afford. I was able to see a doctor, not just a woman's client for birth control, and a dentist for the first time in years. Then came the divorce process. Neither Kevin nor I could afford lawyers, so I opted for the most simple, no-frills divorce possible. Doing it myself, I didn't ask for money or assets or anything else. I explained to Kevin how to fill out and file the paperwork. He told me it was too emotionally difficult for him. The process was like pulling teeth. At this point, I'd begun having severe flashbacks and panic attacks from his abuse. I asked a trusted friend to communicate with him on my behalf because it was so taxing on my well-being. Kevin refused to talk to him. When dealing with him directly, I told Kevin that there was absolutely no communication regarding anything other than the divorce. He violated this boundary multiple times. More screenshots on this. Hi Kevin, I just went to the post office and sent the form 3A, acceptance of service. Let me know when you receive it and I'll help with the paperwork that needs to be filled so we can proceed with the process. Also, let's please keep this conversation to getting this divorce process done. I know you said to keep this chat here to just the divorce, but I was at, and then we have this blanked, the other day, and they put in a round one. Isn't that crazy? Hey, shot in the dark here, but would you by chance ever be interested in catching up? You can of course decline. I'd hate to make you feel like you have to ignore the question and cause havoc on your emotions for the day if you want to have no communication with me. Almost a year after what should have been the 4-month process, we finally divorced and I was free. I blocked him everywhere and blocked his number. He was finally gone. However, for a long time, I was afraid to share my story from 2020 through 2021. There was a project that I was working on as a composer in 2021. I came forward to the project lead, the same friend who told me to stand up for myself back in October about the abuse I was healing from and my needs to focus on my mental health and full-time work. Though she seemed to be understanding and I initially resigned without issue, she later informed me that she filled my position by hiring Kevin and another colleague, credited under the Push Pause moniker. I was devastated. It made me afraid that I couldn't trust anyone, that my story didn't matter, and that anyone I told would rather prioritize their own convenience than stand up for me. Yet despite all the setbacks, the fear, the anger, and the pain for the past 2 years, I had been in therapy, established a stable living situation, have supported friends and family, and I have finally come to a place where I can share my story. Now I want to make sure that others that are in those places I have been can now have a resource and find a way other than taking their own life like I almost did. In conclusion, to the people that knew about my situation but couldn't do anything, I hope you know that I hold no ill will and I understand the impossible situation you were put in. As trapped as I was, I can't imagine being put in a position where you can't help your friends or loved ones. I hope that by sharing my story, I can help others avoid this same situation and recognize the signs. Now, the rest of this is actually what to look out for when dealing with red flags, and that's really good, and there's a lot of resources here as well for those who need it. So I'll just tell you to look at that stuff yourself if you want to know about that. But after hearing all that, it is a really sad situation, but I would like to say there is actually a happy ending to all of this, because a few hours back Hyper Potions themselves actually came out and made a statement saying that they have removed Kevin from Hyper Potions. And thankfully, this not only is a great thing for Evelyn, but it's a great thing for anyone who's a fan of Hyper Potions to begin with, because honestly, according to them, Kevin wasn't even the majority of the band. He didn't do most of the work, so you're not losing out on anything from him not being there. You just lose a groomer, and that's pretty great, honestly. I'd rather there be some legal consequences, but as it stands, he's lost his job, and that's amazing, and Evelyn's been able to recover. So it's great that all this has happened and it's been able to be resolved in the way it has. But that's pretty much the whole story, and again, I hope Evelyn is feeling good after all of this. And it's just such a sad situation that this is just another stain on the Sonic community that seems to be happening more and more, especially when you think as well that during the same breath, Ian Flynn has also been getting death threats for just writing the character how he writes them in the IDW comics. But I'm just going to leave it there. All the resources will be in the description below, and as always, I have to say goodbye.